Hi, everyone. My name is Jessie Fairbanks, and I'm a features programmer with Doc NYC. I'm very pleased to welcome you to a special Q&A for The Last Out. Today, we have with us the co-directors, Sami Kahn and Michael Gassert, to talk about their film. We're also joined by Carla Gutierrez, the editor of the film. Welcome, Sami, Michael, and Carla. Thank you for joining us and for sharing The Last Out with our audience at Doc NYC.
Thanks, Jessie. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks.
So I'm going to start with you, Sami. You, in previous interviews, that this story started with Gus. Can you tell what it was like, how you met him, how you learned about his work with ball players from Cuba, and what prompted you to make this film with Michael?
Yeah, I mean, really what we started with was a sort of thematic and emotional idea about the costs, making it to the pros exacts upon players, and this sort of nexus between the migrant trail and pro sports. And so we were sort of searching around for a way into the story, and we read about Gustavo Dominguez in a 2007 article by Michael Lewis in Vanity Fair. And Gus has this fascinating backstory, which we just can hint at in the film, about sort of inventing the market for Cuban baseball players. That's the word that Michael Lewis used in the 1990s. And then crossing the line legally and being prosecuted by the US government for being part of a criminal conspiracy to smuggle players. And so we started with Gus because he had this fascinating story, and we thought we were telling a kind of redemption story about Gus out of prison with this group of Cuban baseball players in Costa Rica. Little did we know that the story was going to become much more complicated for all of us, but especially for Happy, Carlos, and Baro, the three main characters of our film.
Thank you, Sami. And Michael, you have a long history doing sound design on films and did sound, and you also filmed and did several other things throughout this multi-layered story. Talk to us about what motivated you to jump into the director's chair and why you wanted to tell this story with Sami.
Well, I think, one of the things that Sami keyed into about this story and the whole situation surrounding immigration, Cuban immigrants, and Cuban baseball was this unique situation that we have with the Cuban government, with this sort of ridiculous trade embargo that really, puts immigrants and Cuban ball players in a really difficult position where they have to participate in really dark, sometimes illegal things. And we're familiar with stories of risk and sacrifice, not only for sport, but for anybody who's, trying to reach the top of their craft or pursue a better life for themselves or the loved ones around them. And as sports fans, as just filmmakers, I think we have a sense of what it takes to make film, all of this content that we're inundated with all the time. But I think as fans of sport, sport has so much to offer, whether, you're playing or just enjoying the game, but it's no longer a moment where, we say to athletes that, their job is just to shut up and play. I think we've seen the role that athletes have in terms of the call to social justice. And, I echoed Sami's interest in really trying to pull back the curtain on the human story behind one of these things that we enjoy. We take sport, like other entertainment, for granted as consumers, as if we're entitled to it, and sort of forget about the human beings behind the story. So I think, my experiences working with, musicians in Morocco and Nicaragua and all of my film experiences drew me to that closeness that it really takes to, and that relationship and the trust that it really takes in order to, I think, tell an honest story. So I was really grateful that Sami, keyed into this story and welcomed me into the project.
It's beautifully done and such an important story to share, especially in this moment that we're all in the continuum of time. Carla, I'd like to ask you about what it was like to be an editor on this film. You were receiving footage from Sami and Gus in San Diego. Michael was somewhere in Costa Rica or maybe on the border. There's so many different subjects and stories to follow in this film. And as Sami mentioned at the top, it is both a story of their journey as ball players, but also a story of Happy and Carlos and Barros's journey into the US. What was it like putting structure around that film and editing all of it together? Oh, I think you're on mute, Carla. You're still muted.
Is that
Yes.
now? Okay, sorry about that. So I believe I came on board when it was about 80% of the footage shot. So a lot of the story had happened already. Happy was already in the United States. They had gone through the journey of his migration to this country, and really it was just spectacular to see what they had captured on camera and how intimate, Sam and Mike had gotten with the characters. And that was, I think, what was really special about, their footage and the potential for the story. So I really, that's the part of the story that I kind of like started working with first when I first started editing the film. There was also a lot of baseball that was shot in Costa Rica, which I was kind of like learning about because I'm not a baseball fan. And so I think that was a bit of a learning curve for me in terms of like just to identify what was good baseball and what's not a good hit. And that was really fun, but really kind of learning to see it as this beautiful dance and starting to learn about the craft and understanding why, Mike and Sami got so excited when they saw the guys training and really getting into it. But the characters, the strength of the characters was there and how intimate it have gotten, Mike and Sami have gotten with them, that, it was not hard to kind of like key into those like very emotional moments for people. When I saw the journey of Happy, I was like, wow, I've never really seen from that perspective, even though there's quite a bit of films about, crossing the border. And yeah, it was just kind of like diving in. And I want to give a big shout out to Daniela Quiroz and Mark Becker, who came in as editors and kind of took the film to the finish line. And they just really, made the film and their stories sing in a beautiful way. So yeah, I mean, it was a really great, fun, story to delve into.
And just to chime in, because I think we were really fortunate to get Carla. It was right before RBG came out, or it was on the cusp of coming out, and she was about to sort of ascend into the stratosphere. And in retrospect, it's like, you look at projects, you look at films and just how the pieces and the people come together, how Kismet and fortune play such a important role in it. And like, I will vividly remember like meeting Carla Mike and I met her for a beer in Midtown at this sort of sports bar. And we had beers and Carla was like, this is the first time I've ever had a job interview over beers. But we thought it was like really appropriate. And again, in retrospect, Carla not being a baseball fan, not knowing anything about it, was exactly what we needed in that phase of the project, because we needed to know where the drama of the film was. And the brilliant thing she did was start building the bones of the film, the spine of the film with Happy and Happy's journey, like her keying into that. And when she started doing that, like the project, I mean, it was still a challenging road from there, but like when she did that, good things started to happen for the project. It really started to resonate with people, and where for years, 3-4 years, we had struggled to, to connect with, buyers and granting organizations. When we showed people that assembly that Carla had made of Happy and Mike's journey, then we understood where the emotional core of the story was.
Completely. I mean, we knew we had a tremendous story in our hands, and we had a lot of footage. And not only was Carla's sense of story in general and what was important, and those babies that we had to leave at the side of the road but just her sensitivity to these guys and these characters, their stories, as human beings, as immigrants, as Latinos. She came to the project with a certain sensitivity and tenderness that we could have only dreamed of, having experienced the story firsthand with Happy, Carlos, Baro, and these guys. So thank you, Carla, so much for that.
I'm gonna start crying.
You guys are the dream team.
Well, not to let it go all to her head though, because Carla, the last Q&A we did with Jesse, Happy was here and he was working out, so we're expecting you to do push-ups or something.
Yeah,
She definitely did
some pumping of iron.
She did gymnastics with the
edit.
edit, that's for sure. She did some serious gymnastics with the edit to get us there.
Well, it's a lot of work behind the scenes, and as we see in the film, a lot of work in front of the camera, the dedication and the commitment that is required of these young men to keep themselves physically in shape. Sami and Michael, I'm sure everyone would love to hear an update on how Carlos, Happy, and Baro are doing.
Yeah, I mean, I can update on Carlos because we talk to him almost every day. Carlos is in Miami. In the last title card for him is, he's working construction. And I think because of COVID, that work has kind of dried up. So he's just, trying to make a living as best he can, driving Uber and Lyft. And he actually had a little baby boy. His wife gave birth 3 months ago, and so he's enjoying being a papa down there, and he's enormously excited about the release of the film.
Sorry, Michael, not to cut you off, but Sami also, his status says he's in the process of getting his residency card, correct?
He's in the process of getting his citizenship, actually. He has his green card and he's in the process of becoming a US citizen.
Thank you. That's such an important update, I think. Sorry, Michael, what were you about to say?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, Carl, Happy as well. In the story, we've been able to sort of witness his, I guess, transformation, not only physically, but as a brand new immigrant, his first days in Houston and the US, to, really trying to live his best life, if not to sort of quote an annoying phrase to some degree, but Happy is great. I mean, we keep in touch with him. He's resilient. I remember the first time that I connected with him in Houston, and I think we used some voiceover moments, and he was struggling. He showed up in kind of this beat up car, but his hair was looking slick with the flat top, and we went out, and he's always optimistic. I mean, there's something about Happy, and I was thinking about this today, that I think we didn't realize how special and fortunate we were to have a subject like him, because he wears his emotions on his sleeve to some degree, but he doesn't need to turn it on and off for the camera or for you or for anybody, because he's just really himself all the time, and he embraced this experience in a way where it just felt so fluid. Like, he made us feel comfortable for being there. He gave us the best room in the apartment, these types of things. So it's a pleasure to stay in touch with him and see how everything is going as he builds his life in Houston. With Baro, we keep in touch as well, and as we see in the film, both Happy and Carlos were able to take advantage of the asylum we were given to Cuban immigrants up until 2017, whereas Baro is still stuck in the DR to some degree, and I think he just got his passport renewed, but has been having trouble with papers and actually being able to pursue some offers that he's had to play abroad. And Mexico and Venezuela. And as you can imagine, with the COVID situation and the lack of work in general, it's increasingly difficult for him. But I've been able to catch up with him a little bit as I've been down there recently for another project. But we're worried about him, and hopefully with the exposure of the film, he can help use it to phase into his whatever he's doing next, whether it's baseball or not.
And I have one more question for you, Carla, but before we get to that, do either of you have an update you can share on how Roberto Munez, the assistant coach that features heavily in the film, is doing, and on Gus, on how he may be or what his thoughts are on the film?
Yeah, I mean, with Roberto is a U.S. citizen, so he kind of splits his time. He always would split his time between Costa Rica and the U.S. So he's in Tampa with his family. He's got a couple of grandchildren, I think, and we're also pretty close with Roberto. He was one of the first barometers for us realizing that we had something special with the film, and he'd just tell Mike and I, it's like, oh, this film is going to resonate. If you get this movie done, it's going to resonate. So of course we just had to get it done. Doing some of these Q&As with Carlos Happy and Roberto has sort of reunited them. And that's been great to watch that after so many years. With Gus, I mean, it's going back to what I was saying about, we started thinking that we were telling a redemption story, and realized that it was becoming much more complicated as we went on. And so the commitment, we have to ourselves, to the project, to the participants of the doc, is to capture the truth, no matter where it takes us. And that's the literal commitment we made to Gus. So that said, he's not happy with the finished film. I think he was hoping for something that was a little softer on him. But Mike and I are confident in the process we took in order to give him a chance to have his say. And I think some people, are very sympathetic to Gus. They see him as a businessman who's just trying to earn a buck. I think that sort of commodification of people is definitely something in the film that we tried to key into. So, yeah, I mean, he's in Los Angeles. He's still doing his thing. He's, a big capitalist. He'll be fine.
Yeah, I guess the antithesis in terms of response to Gus would be the fact that Carlos and Happy and Roberto and Barro as well feel very pleased with the film, and that it is honest and authentic to their experience, which is what every filmmaker I think strives for, is for the majority of the subjects to feel that this is an honest representation of their life. And so,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think the thing is, this was all for everybody as it happened. It was a puzzle, it's like, how do these pieces fit together? And thanks to Carla, thanks to Mark Becker and Daniela Quiroz, we were able to put this puzzle together. But like the power of when we showed it to Carlos, Happy, Barro, and other characters in the film, where they said, that was my story, that's what happened, thank you for doing that, now I understand what happened. It's a really difficult journey that they all went through. And so to have that sort of account of your life is really validating and powerful. So that means a lot to us.
And there's always so much story. I mean, these are people's real life, or it's their real life, So there's a lot to sift through, and I think some of these moments in the Q&As have been really interesting for us as well, as Sami alluded to, where Roberto's been able to talk to the other guys and say, listen, Happy, when we cut you, all us coaches got together and we were in tears. We knew what this was going to mean for you, So, hopefully not only with Happy and Carlos and Barro, but we can see the humanity in Roberto and Villalon and Gus. I mean, Gus is a complicated character, but like Sami said, we are interested in the truth, and you know, our experience is our truth. The impression we leave on people is their truth, you know, of us. So everybody's going to have a different experience, like we as filmmakers did in making this story and in seeing the film. So even though Gus isn't happy, the fact that people see him in different light is reassuring to us that, you know, we've given him his fair say. And as Sami has said many times to me when we were talking about, you know, the film itself, that true drama is well-intended people, you know, doing the best they can. There aren't these clear villains of good and bad, and not everything is black and white. And I think Carla and Daniela and Mark were so keen and smart to key into these complicated human moments where in their simplicity, it, you know, Happy on the wall saying, you know, he could have just signed me for this or that or whatever. And you feel that from Happy, but you also understand from Gus, like, yeah, I could have signed these guys for 100 grand, but we were trying to do something bigger than that. So, you know, everybody has their own choice of how you want to see that situation or the bigger political situation.
Thank you for those thoughts, Michael, and for adding more color to what happened behind the scenes. My final question for you, Carla, is, as Sami alluded to, you were building this puzzle from all these different pieces of different experiences. All three of the men, Happy, Carlos, and Barrow, have very different paths into the US, and their dreams take on, sorry, the sun is coming out in Chicago, as you can see. All three of the men have a very different experience getting to the US, and their dreams shift in the ways that they're held for each of the three men. My question to you, Carla, is, as you were putting together this wonderful, beautiful tapestry with the different pieces, was there anything that you had to leave on the cutting room floor? Is there a particular scene or moment that you really wish you could have included in the film?
So I never feel bad about leaving things behind. I always feel like, you know, that the film has to find like a balance just to make the film the strongest film it can be. And you know, I mean, I have the benefit of like not having interacted with the story except for like through the video that I get. So so it's easier for me to kill babies than sometimes it is for directors. So I don't see that many documentaries, like maybe it could have been like 2 minutes shorter or 5 minutes shorter. So to me, it's all about like what the story needs. You know, there are sometimes like entire stories. For example, in this case, I mean, they were following really 4 characters, and one of them didn't make it into the film. That are, you know, important stories and great stories. It just, you know, it's just like the film needed to be this specific, you know, thing. Yeah, so I do not feel bad about leaving things behind. I would say though, one thing that I think, I'm just gonna say what is really special to me about the story that, you know, that Sami and Mike really capture is the understanding of what is the demand from the United States, of, you know, the need that we have here demanding immigrants to come. Because a lot of the stories that we see of immigrants is just kind of this desire to reach the United States, but there's a huge demand for their labor and for, you know, in this case, for their bodies. And to me, that was really important. And it's done in such an intimate way, but it's, you know, it's just kind of like the other side of the coin that people don't talk about too much. And it was really present in this film. So I'm very proud to have been a part of that.
Thank you. And it's very timely, you know, baseball season hitting its apex right when the festival starts, and that there is demand for us to have a certain caliber of ball players, and that demand feeds into this very complicated pipeline that the film illuminates. Thank you, all of you, so much for being here with us and for sharing The Last Out with our audience. Everyone at home, please put your hands together for the co-directors, Sami Kahn and Michael Gassert. And thank you so much, Carla Gutierrez, for joining us. And we wish you all the best of luck with the film.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Sami.